Hello, my name is Rickard, and in this tutorial, I'm going to give you some tips and tricks for improving your composites in Photoshop. So Nucly runs a very active Facebook group. We have more than 13,000 members, and one of them recently posted this composite and asked what I would do to improve it. Now, she did send me the layered file, so I was able to go through the entire thing and make the revisions that I felt needed to give it more depth, a little more color, and to make our subject pop more. So here you can see the before, and here you can see the after. Now, rather than explaining everything I did, which is going to get really boring, let's dive into Photoshop, and I'll show you how you can make these changes, and hopefully in the course of this you'll learn some tips and tricks that you can use in your own composites.
Let's look at what we have here. So here we have some shadow and lighting, and you can see that that's adding some highlights there. I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of this for now. Then we have our layer and dodge. Okay, so this adds some shadows and highlights to the image. I'm going to go ahead and throw this away as well. Alright, and here we just have, looks like a little bit of a cream overlay. I'm going to get rid of that as well. I don't think we need all these. Let's go ahead and throw those away. Okay, here we seem to have something that's just adding a little bit of muddiness to this. We might use that, but I'm going to go ahead and throw it away for now. And then here we have a vignette. That's fine, but I'm not going to use that for now. Okay, and then we have these light rays. I'm going to go ahead and throw those away as well. I don't think I want those. Light source. So this is one I probably will add back in, but for now, I'm going to turn this off. I'm also going to turn off of this. I just kind of want to go back to our starting point. What is this? Raisin pumpkin spice. Okay, so this is just adding a little bit of color to it. I'm going to get rid of that as well. Okay, so then this is our animals layer. Not sure why the crop is different here. If I turn this off, gives you an idea of the crop there. So rather than doing this, which seems to be a strange way of cropping, let's instead just crop the image. So I'm going to reset the crop so it's back to the original. I want to make sure this delete crop pixels is turned off. That way if I ever do want to come back, I can always do that, meaning I can always go back to this earlier state. Okay, so we kind of want to center her up in our frame here, so maybe something like this. And let's hit the check mark. I'm going to hit resolve. Oops. Okay, so when you have a smart object, it's not going to let you recrop without rasterizing. It looks like one of these I'm missing, probably this one. So maybe I'll just get rid of this. That should solve my problem. Okay, and then let's look at our crop one more time. So it's this tree and then this tree here. So that looks like it would be this tree here. So something like this. And then let's hit the check mark. Okay, so now we're working with our original layers here. We can get rid of this copy for cropping. And here we have corrections that have been added to the animals to make them integrate, which is great, but again, having like 4 layers to do this, I'd rather be able to, as much as possible, doing it with less layers is always going to be better. So let's go ahead, throw all these away. I'm going to throw this levels away. And there you go. All right, so now I have my animals ready. The one thing I also want to fix here is this fox seems to have this ear just doesn't look right to me. It looks too small. It looks like the camera, or sorry, the lens that took this photo had a much wider angle and a different perspective than the other ones. So I'm going to see if I can just do a small tweak to that. Let's double click the little fox here. I'm going to delete this this ear and maybe just copy this one. So let's go here, and easiest way for me to get rid of this is probably going to be just using some existing information. So I'm going to take my blue channel, paste that on here. I'll just use the difference color mode here to line this up. There you go. And then I want to curve this so that the hair and the ear are separate. So I'll just bring up my curve here and just increase this. It's about there. And then something like this. And then I'll just go to my channels, command click on this. So I have my white selected. And then if I go on here, I can go to my erase tool and just erase that ear. Because I made my selection ahead of time, it's not going to erase that. So something like this. And then we'll just take this, make another copy of it, and with the bottom copy, I'm going to move it to about there, and then do command transform, put my anchor point where the ear is, and then maybe rotate it a bit, make it a bit smaller. Something like this. And then we'll just do a lasso just around the ear and then add a mask. So something like this. Maybe make it a little bit lower. Something like that. And then I'm going to take these two layers, convert them to a new smart object here, and then drag this into my file. I'm going to call this Fox. And then again, I'll use my difference here. And then do a transform. I'm going to line up the eye and then put the anchor point there. Something like this. All right, so we'll do that. And then let's put this on normal. And I'll just transfer our mask here, like so. And then just take this and add it into our mask there, so something like that. Okay, so got all of our animals in place. Now what I'm going to do is add some adjustments to them. And rather than doing them with curves and so forth, I'm just going to use a camera raw. That's going to give me all the control I need to adjust curves, contrast, color, everything else. Let's start with the fox. So overall, you can see that the fox just needs to be more colorful to fit in this scene. Also, it feels a little too low contrast compared to our woman here. You can see she's very strong shadows and highlights. So let's go to our filter, go to camera raw, and first maybe just add a little bit of warmth, then add some contrast. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit too. I'm going to add some vibrance, and then also just add some clarity. We can try the dehaze as well. This will give us kind of more contrast, but I think clarity is probably a little bit better here. So something like this. Maybe bring up the exposure just a tiny bit, and also the shadows just a tiny bit. Is it okay? Okay, so already this fits much better in this scene. It just feels more like it belongs here. Let's see if we can do a similar thing with the raccoon. Now, a great thing about smart filters is I can just hold down Option and Command and drag this onto there. Now the raccoon doesn't need to be warmed up, so we can go into our camera raw filter and just double click on our temperature, double click on our tint, so we're not adding that color. And then I think we can also increase the exposure a little bit, maybe take down the contrast, and then let's hit OK. Also don't need this anymore. So that's looking pretty good. Next, let's do the squirrel. Now the squirrel just feels very soft in compared to the background. So in addition to anything else, we'll definitely want to add some sharpening. So let's go ahead and double click here. Also, this one does not need as much vibrance, so let's just double click and get rid of that vibrance. And then in here, I want to go down to my detail and add a bunch of sharpening. So I think something like that. Let's hit OK. Again, already looks better. Now we are also having this halo issue around the tail. One trick to get rid of that is to use more than one layer. So what you can do is basically make a second layer, put the underneath layer on multiply, and then with a soft brush on your mask, just around the edges here, we can paint out that halo. So something like this. Okay, and then the last one is the bunny, so let's go ahead and do that one. I'm going to go ahead and take what I did for the raccoon. So right here, just hold down shift and drag that to the bunny. And already that's looking a bit better. Okay, so now the animals are basically how I want them. Now what we're going to do is add a little bit of shadows to them. So first for the raccoon, should be casting some shadows here. So let's put a layer underneath and we'll call this raccoon shadows. And I'm just going to use a soft brush for this. The other thing I want here is I know I'm going to want to separate the woman from the background. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to go ahead and option click on this layer. What is this layer doing here? Okay, I'm actually just going to get rid of this. I want to use the original artwork, which is this one here. So let's go ahead and option click on that, and let's just select out our subject here. Go into the select and mask workspace. Let's see how that did. And here we'll just add a little bit of edge detection. And then with our edge brush tool, we'll just paint along the edge of the hat here. And maybe the rips on the jacket there. Okay, so that looks good. Let's hit OK down here. We can find it. There you go. All right, and then I'm going to do option click on this again, and then with my selection I'm going to do Command J, and we'll call this model or subject. And for the shadows that the raccoon is pushing here, we'll go onto a soft brush with black, just paint a little bit here, maybe a little bit there. And then we'll go with our erase tool and just kind of erase the shadow where we don't want it. And if I invert this selection, I can delete it out of the background there. So it's just hitting her. So something like that. And then we'll take this down a little bit. Okay, and then next, let's add some shadows on top of the raccoon. We'll call this top shadows. And for this one, I'm going to clip it to this And then with that same black brush, we'll just add a little bit of shadow here on this side. And that should be enough. All right, next we'll do the squirrel. Well, the squirrel I don't think needs any more shadows particularly, although he probably would be casting a little bit of a stronger shadow on her. So I'm going to add a layer on top of her. And we're going to call this animal shadows. And here I'm just going to paint a little bit here where this squirrel is. So something like just a little bit of an ambient shadow. And where the sun is hitting behind them, I'll get rid of that. And then I also want a little bit of shadow from this bunny here. So we'll paint a little bit of shadow here as well. Something like that. And notice this is just a very heavy shadows, whereas the bunny doesn't have any shadows. So let's go onto our bunny and let's add some shadows on the bunny. So this will be bunny shadows. And here I think I'm just going to add some shadows kind of underneath the bunny like this, and then also where the bunny's body is. So something like that. Let's try this maybe on soft light. No. All right, normal looks best, but let's just take it down to about there. All right, and then we'll just erase a little bit of it there. So something like this. Okay, now the other thing that's bothering me is that we have so much light hitting this scene, and yet this is also dark. So let's see if we can fix that up. This is kind of like the eye of the photographer here. And you can see all these eyes have a pretty strong catchlight in them. So it doesn't make sense for this not to have a catchlight. So I just downloaded this image from Pexels. And I'm just going to steal this kind of catchlight for the camera here. So something like this. Just do Command C. And then on top of our subject, I'll do Command V, and then do transform, just center this up where the camera is. Make this a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to put this on screen. You can see that's just kind of adding an element there that brings our photographer a little bit more into the foreground there. All right, and then I want to push the background back. Now I realize you had a glow coming from this area. I kind of want to center it behind our subject. Just generally when I'm doing a composite, you want the light to kind of frame your subject there. So we'll add a little glow here. And just go onto my gradient tool, make sure I'm on the radial, kind of select a warm green from this area, and then just go here, kind of go to about there. I'm going to put this on screen and then do Command T for transform, and just start making this glow a bit bigger. It's too big. So something like this. And I don't want it in front of this tree. So what I'm going to do is with this background layer selected, I'm going to go onto my quick selection tool, just start painting this tree here. So something like this. And then we'll add, holding down Option, we'll add a mask there. And then just using the gradient tool, kind of gradient away from the bottom so that our glow is mainly behind our subject there. So something like this. And also this would be casting a little bit of a shadow on our fox. So let's add a shadow on top of our fox. Call this top shadow. I'll clip this to the bottom layer and then back onto my brush tool, black. Just paint a little bit more shadow here. Take that down. So something like that. And the other thing I want to do here is just make a little bit more light on the eye itself. Again, our person is important, an important part of our portrait. So it's one of those ironclad rules is you always want your model to have some kind of catch light in their eye. And just add an overall lightness to the eye area here. See what I have to work with. Okay, so something like that, and then let's just take this down. Maybe erase just this, so we're just hitting this area there, and then also want to add an actual highlight to the eye. Now, I see one there, it's super subtle, but it's going to be enough to help our cause. We'll put this on screen. And then I'm going to take this down. So it's pretty subtle, but it's there. So something like that. Maybe a little stronger. And then also the brightness of this eye bugs me. I know it's super tiny point, but let's make this just a little bit darker. Go back on top of our fox here. Okay, so those are starting to feel more like they all belong together. The other thing I want to do here is just add some elements on top that are going to help kind of bring everything even more together. So let's go to the very top of our image. If you can add like a color grade or something that helps melt the elements together, that's always a big plus. So in this case, I'm going to do two things. One is three things actually. I'm going to add a vignette to our whole scene. So we can do that with a curve. So I'm just going to do kind of where I want my vignette to be. So something like this. Maybe even transform it a bit so it follows the shape better. I'm going to add a curve here. Take down the middle, invert it, and add a feather. And we can always adjust it here if I want to kind of bring down my whites. So something like this. I don't want to go too contrasty, which is why I'm bringing it down on this edge rather than just in the middle. Something like that just helps. And then let's also do another layer for our noise. So I'm just going to add a gray, 50% gray overlay, fill that, and then we'll go down to noise, add noise. And then we'll make this now this is too strong, but let's take it down to maybe 50. Just hit 5 on the keyboard. Okay, so already feeling a little bit better. Now let's try one other thing, which is a color grade on top of the whole thing. So here, the main thing I want to do is I want to get our shadows and our highlights to feel similar. So I'm going to have to separate the colors in order to do that, because with RGB all I can do is make my highlights brighter or darker. I can't really influence their color. But if I go into red, I can start pushing some red into my highlights, a little bit of cyan into my shadows. And right away, these objects start to feel more like they belong together because the shadows on these objects have similar color to the others. So let's do that in our reds, and then maybe let's do a little bit in our green as well. So something like this, and then blue. I like to push up the bottom of the blue to get some blue into our blacks, and then push down the top just to get a little bit of yellow into our highlights. So something like this. Now these dark halos are always kind of a a sign that you're compositing. So I like to get rid of those if I can. If we go into our subject and add a mask, we already have another copy of our subject underneath. So all I have to do is just mask out this edge, and we'll get rid of that dark halo. And that'll right away make this look a little more real. So something like this. And I do think our fox is a little bit too dark for this scene. So let's go back to our fox layer. Now the beauty of how I have this file set up, we can delete all these, is that I have everything still working in layers, meaning all these adjustments, none of them are a flattened version, so I can go back here, move things around, and all my corrections sit on top of it. And for the fox, I want to just brighten them up a little bit, so let's go in here, maybe go to our basic panel, take down the contrast, bring up my exposure, and maybe bring up my shadows a little bit more. And there you go, that looks a little bit better. And I do think the shadow is a little bit strong on her head there. Let's go here, maybe just take that out like so. Okay, and then the other thing that I can do here just to help sell this is to add an element on top as a foreground element. And for that, I'm going to go into my libraries here and go to my maple leaves. This is part of my foreground elements pack. I'm just going to drag a couple of these in here. We'll adjust them in a second. And then down here, I'm going to take one of these large ones and just pull that in as well. Okay, so for the large one, I'm going to go all the way back here, kind of go behind everything except for the background, and just place that. Let's turn off these other maple leaves for now. And let's just place this so that we have leaves falling in our background. So something like this. And I think something like that. And I'm just looking at the ones in the sky here. I want them to be a little bit brighter, so let's go to our curves. Just bring that up a little bit. I think I also want them a little bit redder, so let's go to our red, add some red, and then in our blue I want to add some yellow. I just want to make them a little more orangey, a little more colorful. So something like this. And then I want them to be a little bit blurry. So let's go to our Gaussian blur, and you'll see right away they're inheriting the grain from our grain layer. So already they're looking quite nice. So something like this. And then I want to add a mask and just kind of use a gradient to cut out all the ones down here. So something like that. I also don't want any on top of the tree. So just like that. Now we just have some in the air. And then we can add a few in our foreground. So here, I'm going to take this one, add a blur to it. And I want to make sure these are all underneath our color correction and our film grain layer. So put them about there. And here, if I can have this on top of both my subject and something I've added, like the rabbit, even if it's just a little, it's going to do a lot to help sell this illusion, meaning sell the fact that this was a photo and not a composite. So something like this. Maybe add a little contrast to it with just Command M and doing a curve. So it has similar contrast to the rest of our foreground here. So something like this. I think maybe there is actually a better place for that one. And again, I'm going in front of my fox here. That's on purpose. I want these elements to overlap just a little bit. All right, and then we'll do this one maybe here. And I'm just going to copy these smart filters. That'll give me the blur and a bit of color correction on this guy. So something like this. And then let's try this one. Again, I'm going to copy the effects. And then let's see where we want this one. Maybe this one. I think I want more of a blur on this one because it's closer to us, closer to the camera. So something like this, and then let's try getting rid of that curve. So maybe something like this. And for this one, I'm going to kind of shove it so it's covering a little bit of her arm and just a little bit of the raccoon there. Although this is giving us a lot of dead space down here. So what I think I'm going to do here is adding another curve. And the reason I'm doing this one on top and not just turning on this curve is I want it to have a separate mask. So that way I can make it darker like this. And then on this mask with a gradient, just do a black gradient from the top. So the top part of this is a little brighter. So something like that. And then I think as a final step, I might just do one more vignette. Maybe try to get a little bit of this green to glow in front. So what I mean by glow in front is if we add another layer here and with a soft brush, very low flow. So like something like 05. I'm going to put this layer on screen and then just select this kind of green color and paint in this area here so that we have some of that green glow coming on top of our image, kind of glowing in front of everything. So something like this. It's also going to help kind of direct your eye, right? Because your eye is going to go to the lighter part of the image. And this part we're just making a little bit lighter. So something like this. And then we'll do our final vignette on top of the whole thing. Or actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the vignette we already did, bring that on top of these. Actually, I think it looked better underneath. So we'll leave that underneath, and then we'll do one more on top of the whole thing. So we'll do it like this. Go to our curve. Invert this. And then we'll do one final color as well. Now I know I told you earlier that you should try to do all these in one adjustment layer. But, you know, we all violate our own rules sometimes.
So there you have it. Those are the things that I would have done differently in Photoshop on this composite image. Now hopefully in the course of this you learned some tips, tricks, and techniques that you can use in your own projects to improve your composites and improve your general workflow in Photoshop. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please subscribe to my channel, leave a comment, leave a like, share this video, and here's some other tutorials to check out. I'll see you next time.